module, Learning to Teach in simSchool. Over the next 10 minutes, we're going to go over the fundamental details of how to navigate a simSchool module and how to operate within the simulation play space. When we click on play on our course dashboard, we arrive at the module overview page. This provides us our instructions and our resources that we're going to need to be able to be successful in the module. Now note that as of October 2023, simSchool introduced an update that does require us to look at our resource files. Until we look at each of our resource files, simSchool will not unlock our modules to teach. So do make sure to open up the class profile. That contains all the relevant information about the simulated students that we're going to be working with. The class instructions, this extracts for us all of the learning tasks, all of the accommodations, the modifications, and learning prompts available to us in the simulated lesson plan, and reference files that actually give us a chance to download the lesson plan that inspired this module should we like to take that into a live classroom. After we look at each one, simSchool will give us a progress indicator, in this case a green check mark, and that will let the system know that we're ready to move on and teach our modules. The next thing in our module timeline is our teaching sims. Now in simSchool, we are required to teach each class multiple times because research has shown that that's our best way to build reflective practice. So where we see that a class is locked, simSchool requires that in the prior class we teach for at least 15 minutes and we go review our own observation report. That unlocks the next class for us. In this particular module, the learner has already reviewed all of their resource files, has taught the first class for at least 15 minutes, and the next class is ready to teach. So let's go ahead and start that class together. When we launch a simSchool class, it will always repeat for us the teaching overview to remind us of what our objectives are in this class. The next thing that it displays for us is our objectives to complete. These are the things that the artificial intelligence is monitoring us on. It will be watching when we do these things, with what frequency, and with whom in the simulated class. And then it will give us back feedback, telling us what we did well, how we could improve, and what our equality and equity indicators were. When we start teaching, we should see the clock count down in real time, and we should immediately see a clock pop up on the bottom of the simSchool play space. If we don't see that, that might be an indication that we have a browser conflict or that we may have very low bandwidth. In that case, always reach out to simSchool. You can reach FAQs related to simSchool functionality on each page of the environment by clicking on the simSchool tips icon. So if your simSchool class isn't loading properly, or if things are running slowly, you may get tips here that are useful. But note that we can always reach support by clicking on I have another question. Now, once we're in the simulation, the students are going to sit waiting for us to begin doing anything, and we have multiple tools available to us. We can click on the profile icon, and here we can reach the profile details for each of our students, as we saw in the class profile PDF resource, but now they're available to us within the simulation. We can click on Teach, and within Teach, we have our lesson plan with our introductory tasks, our learning tasks, and if there are closing and assessment prompts within this lesson plan, we'll see them here as well. We can access class management features, and within class management, we can see that they're divided into 3 different categories: differentiation strategies that we can use, verbal strategies that we can use to monitor and manage the class, and nonverbal strategies that we can use to monitor and manage the class. We also see that we have accommodations available for us, and they're also divided into several categories: interventions that may be beneficial for our students, presentation alternatives, things related to timing in accommodations, differences in how we may present the learning experience to students by way of small group or one-on-one instruction, and how we might ask the students to respond. We'll also see modifications available to students if there are modifications that would benefit students in this particular classroom. Now note that in the student profiles, if a student does have an IEP or a 504 plan, we'll see additional detail here on information for the student. So I'm going to navigate through and see that I do have a student, Brody, who does have an IEP plan, and I can see the accommodations that will be beneficial for him. So now the system knows that I've looked at this. I see what will be useful for Brody, and if I notice that he's struggling or if he expresses that he's having some problems, now I know what to refer to that would be useful for him, and I can come to my Teach tab, I can click on my accommodations, and I can find the appropriate strategy that would be useful for him. Now I also have the option to interact with my students by way of comments that I might make to them. I can choose from the options that are available for me, or I can also type a comment. Now note that it is important to choose the intensity of the comment that you're going to make to the students. They do understand emotion. So you can change this wheel to a very firm tone of voice, a very friendly tone of voice, or a very neutral tone of voice each time that you're working with them, and they will respond in different ways to that. I can also monitor whole class progress by way of academic attention and emotional engagement. I can access logs of all of my choices that have been made in the simulation so far. And I can click on a snapshot button to see the state of all of the students at the same time. Now, where this is really useful is that everything in simSchool means something. Once I give my students something to do, I will start to see indicators in the simulation that tell me how they're relating to the expectations that I've asked of them. So let's go ahead and give our students something to do. I'm going to come to Teach. I'm going to come to my lesson plan and look at introductions. So let's see, in this particular lesson plan as it was written, my first option is today we're going to learn about counting and numbers. Let's begin by reading 2 books by one of my favorite authors. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give that to the whole class. And I'm expecting them to take out a pencil and paper because they're allowed to listen and they're allowed to follow along. So simSchool will present that prompt for me on the screen. I don't have to have a microphone and I don't have to have speakers to use simSchool. I am using my keyboard in this version of the application, so I should be able to use this in any setting that I would like. Now I do see that I have multiple students with their hands raised. I'm going to click on a couple of these students and then we're going to look at those progress indicators. So yes, Olivia. Let's see what Olivia has to say. Can you tell me if I did this right? Well, the students are just listening right now, so I'm going to assume that maybe she just needs a little bit of interaction with me, maybe a little bit of just validation. So I am going to come to talk, and I'm just going to say, you're doing well. I'm going to say that in a friendly tone of voice. Really? So yeah, I'm assuming that she really needs some just contact with me. So now I'm going to come to class management and my nonverbals, and I'm just going to give her a thumbs up. And now I see a nice smile on her face. I see some of my other students sketching and writing. Now notice that the color of the halo around Olivia's head changed. So these colors mean something. And if I mouse over the students or if I click on them, I can see the colors of those halos. And what those correspond to, if I click on the progress icon, I can see my students that are really focused. I can see my students that have moderate focus, and I can see if any of my students are slipping into a low focus area. That's what that color of halo corresponds to. So just that little bit of interaction with Olivia, she's really focused right now. Oh, she just slipped back. I see most of my students are in this moderate focus area, and I do have students that have raised their hands and I haven't called on them. That may pop up later for me in the observation reports. While simSchool doesn't expect me to respond instantly to all student queries, I wouldn't be able to do that in a live classroom. I can't do it in simSchool. It does expect that within about 10 seconds, I'm going to respond to a change in student posture or disposition, or if a student has raised their hand. It expects that in about 10 seconds, that's a reasonable amount of time for me to attend to a student. And if I don't do that consistently, it may come back on my observation report that attending to student learning needs and emotional needs is something that needs attention. So be aware of that. Don't panic if lots of students raise their hand. You have time to attend to them just like you would in a live classroom. And now notice that I see this new icon on Olivia's halo, and it tells me that she's working on the task. If I click on my other students, I can see something similar. If I click on Mia, I can see that she's done. If I click on Brody, I can see that he's done. So these check marks, I see a check mark if a student has met the expectations of the task. They're not going to get any more out of it. I see a clock if they're still actively working. I might see an open circle if the student is capable but they haven't made forward progress yet. And I might see a red alert if they're unlikely to make progress without my intervention. And do know that when I click on a student, it registers to the AI as if I'm making eye contact. So you may notice a student sit up straighter, put their hand down, put their hand up. You may notice their posture change. That's normal. They think that you're making eye contact with them. And if I click on this snapshot icon, I can see everything that's going on for all students all at the same time. So that could be a really helpful tool as well. Now that is how I navigate the simSchool environment, and why all of these bubbles are popping up right now for students that have questions is because I clicked on the snapshot. Now I can go back and I can respond to them one-on-one if I would like to. And that is how you navigate the simSchool play space environment. There's something that you need under each one of these tabs, each of these toolkits. But know that you have time to get used to the environment. You can always hit the pause button, and you are always going to get a chance to teach again after you look at your feedback. And in the next tutorial module, we'll navigate to an observation report and look at the kind of feedback that simSchool gives us after every time that we teach.